They found her behind the stable, dress torn, knees scraped, and a handprint blooming dark across her jaw. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming, she just whispered it. Like it was some secret too shameful for the night to carry. It hurts. When I sit and every soul in Lorne Hollow heard it, every soul turned away, all except me. I was just the drifter passed through towns like wind through broken shutters. Didn't stop long enough to remember names. But the moment I heard her say that, I knew I wasn't leaving Lorne Hollow. Wasn't much on the map, just a crooked line. Buildings that leaned west with the wind, and a saloon that smelled like regret. ID ridden in for a saddle cinch and a drink. I couldn't afford, didn't plan to stay the night, let alone get tangled in someone else's pain. But there was something about her. Not just what they did to her, but what they didn't do after. No doctor came, no sheriff knocked, no one asked questions. They all just carried on like bruises didn't show up in daylight, like silence could scrub a crime clean. The next morning I asked around. Quietly they said her name was Elsie Marin, 17, maybe 18, came from out east. Alone, no kin, the boarding house took her in out of charity. Or maybe guilt, hard to tell in a town like that. She worked at the saloon. Cleaning floors, hauling buckets, not serving drinks, not yet, that's what they said anyway. But I saw the way old Mr. Darrow looked at her when he passed. Saw how the bartender, Slim, always put a hand on her lower back. When he spoke, too familiar, too slow, like he was letting her know who held the leash, and when she walked, she winced. Just barely, but enough. That whisper from the night before wasn't a cry for help. It was a confession, and somehow, everyone already knew. I tried to forget it, rode out past the ridge to where the trees swallowed the sun and the coyotes kept their distance. Built a fire, poured what was left of Murphy's rye into a tin cup. But her voice kept following me. It hurts. When I sit, that kind of pain don't come from accident. That kind of hurt is personal, deliberate, and I'd seen enough of that kind of hurt in the war to know the shape of it. Next morning I saddled my horse, rode back into Lorne Hollow, and tied off at the saloon. Not for a drink, not for trouble. Just to watch, because somewhere behind those swinging doors was the man who made her whisper like that, and I was gonna find him. The saloon was quiet that morning, not empty, just hushed, like the walls had heard something they weren't supposed to, and now they were holding their breath. I walked past a card table where 3 men pretended not to notice me. Their whiskey glasses hadn't been touched, just held. Eyes twitching, fingers still guilt. Makes even the bravest hands go cold. Elsie wasn't there. Slim, the bartender, nodded at me like I was just another saddle-worn stranger passing through his knuckles. We're scabbed. He smiled too easily. You looking for something, friend? He asked. Just thirsty. I said. He poured rye, cheap, sour. I let it sit. I leaned on the counter slow, let him feel the weight of silence between us. You run this place? I asked. Only Lee sits serving it. He chuckled. Hell, I mop the floors when no one else will. What's it to you? Girl works here, Elsie. His smile twitched. She cleans, quiet type, don't say much, bit touched, I think. He said it too fast, like he'd rehearsed it. I said nothing, just stared at his hands, the scabs, the way he shifted them behind the counter like they might speak on their own. She ain't here, he added, looking away. Take Sundays off. It was Tuesday. I stood, left the drink, and walked out. Down the street the church bell rang, though no one pulled the rope. I found her back behind the boarding house, hanging linens that didn't belong to her. Her dress was different, longer, darker, covered more than before. But the limp was still there, small as it was. You don't notice it unless you're looking. She saw me coming and didn't flinch, just kept pinning clothes like we weren't strangers, like she'd been waiting. You gonna ask what happened? She said without turning. No. Why not? Because I already know. She stopped, then hung her head. Then you know no one's gonna do a thing. I might. She looked at me then. Really looked like a wild animal, unsure if the hand reaching toward it was kindness or a snare. They'll come for you, she said. They always do when you don't look away. I nodded to let him try. That night I didn't go back to the cabin. I stayed in town, sitting on the bench outside the saloon, watching, waiting. Seeing who lingered, who ducked their head too fast, who made the mistake of looking me in the eye. And around midnight I saw it. Slim, the bartender, slipping out the side door, wiping his hands on a rag that wasn't dirty, not from work anyway. He headed toward the boarding house like he'd done it 100 times before. And I followed. He didn't knock, just walked around the back real quiet, like head memorized which floorboards creaked. I stayed in the shadow of the barn, close enough to see far enough to not be seen. He stopped beneath her window, tossed a pebble. She opened it. Barely. "You don't answer tonight, Elsie," he said low. "And I tell him you stole from me ill. Tell him you been whoring behind the church with drifters and thieves. You'll hang, girl, and no one'll blink." I felt my blood go cold. He raised his hand to climb in, and I stepped out of the dark. "Why don't you say that to me?" He froze, turned slow. "What the hell do you want?" he hissed. I said nothing, just walked forward. He reached for something under his coat, but I was faster, drew iron, cocked the hammer, and aimed it right between his teeth. "Try it," I said. "I beg you." He backed down, slid away into the dark, mumbling about lies and crazy girls and out-of-town trash. But he didn't come back the next night, or the one after. Elsie never thanked me, not with words. But the next morning I found fresh bread at the base of my saddle, still warm, wrapped in cloth, and a note tucked inside. "You didn't look away, that's more than most." By the time Friday rolled around, the town had changed, not on the surface. Lauren Hollow still went about its business like nothing was wrong. But underneath there was a tremor, like the ground knew something was coming. Folks didn't talk to me much after that night. Didn't offer greetings, didn't offer trouble either. That's how you know a town's guilty. The good ones ask questions, the bad ones get quiet. I spent the next few days watching patterns. Slim kept to the saloon jaw, clenched eyes twitching. Elsie didn't come out much voice. And the sheriff. That was the part that stuck in my throat like bone. Sheriff Harlan Taub, broad man, wide mustache, walked like his boots owned the land they stepped on. He and Slim shared cigars out back of the jail every evening around 6. Didn't say much, just smoked and nodded like two men who'd buried things together. I knew then. Slim didn't act alone. I caught Elsie outside the church on Sunday morning. She wasn't going in. Just standing there staring at the door like it might bite her if she knocked. "You all right?" I asked. She didn't look up. "They think if I pray hard enough, it'll go away. What do you think?" I think prayer didn't stop them the first time. There was a bitterness to her now. Not loud, not sharp, just steady like shed aged years and days. She turned to me. "You gonna stay? In thinking about it, they'll hurt you or make you disappear." I looked her dead in the eye. "They can try." That night I sat in the church, not for religion, just for quiet. Needed to think. I watched the candles burn low. Watched the shadows dance across stained glass and wood. That's when I heard it. It creaked. Then another boots. Someone else was in the church. I stayed still. A figure stepped into the aisle. Sheriff Taub. He didn't see me yet. Walked up to the altar, took off his hat, and knelt like a man, trying to remember what it meant to be forgiven. He whispered something, then said it again. Louder, Lord. You know I didn't mean it to go that far. My stomach twisted. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, he was confessing. Next morning I rode out early down toward the ravine where the old river used to cut through. Before the drought took it, locals called it Widow's Cut. Nothing grew there but secrets. I found tracks, hoof prints, 2 horses, one lighter than the other. Elsie's maybe the other. Bigger, heavier, recent. Then I saw it, a scrap of cloth caught on a thorn-faded blue, the same dress Elsie had worn that first night. And nearby, a boot print and blood in the dirt. I turned back fast, rode like the devil was chasing me, didn't stop until the town came into view. Smoke black and rising from the boarding house. By the time I got there, it was already too late. Flames chewed through the windows. Screams tangled with the crackle of burning wood. Elsie was outside, coughing, hard soot on her face. Shed made it out barely. But someone else hadn't. Slim, he was still inside, shouting for help. And not a single man moved to save him, not even the sheriff. Elsie stood beside me, shivering. Did you? I started. She shook her head. He did it, thought I was still inside, lit the place with me in it. But the floorboards groaned. I got out the back, we watched it burn. The whole town did, but nobody cried. Later, when the flames died and the sun began to rise, Sheriff Taub walked over like a man carrying something too heavy to hold much longer. "I'll say it was an accident," Elsie whispered. I looked at Taub. He met my eyes, and for the first time since I arrived in Lauren Hollow, he looked afraid. Sheriff Harlan Taub wasn't the kind of man to blink easy. But that morning, with ashes on his boots and smoke still curling out of the bones of the boarding house, he blinked twice. You know what happened? he asked, voice flat like he was rehearsing a line. I know enough, I said. He looked past me to Elsie, who stood straight now even though her hands were shaking. She ain't safe, he muttered almost to himself. Not if folks start asking questions, outsiders come sniffing. I stepped closer. You're not scared of questions, I said. You're scared of answers. He didn't deny it, just walked away real slow, that kind of slow a man walks when he knows his name's already carved into a headstone, just waiting for the date tone. The town pretended like nothing had happened. Slim was gone. Burned up and buried under what was left of the boarding house. Sheriff never filed a report. Said it was faulty lamp oil. Tragic, but nobody's fault. Only thing was, Elsie never said where that second boot print came from, and neither did I. A week passed, then another. Each day Elsie looked a little less like a ghost. She started walking straighter. Her eyes didn't scan the horizon like danger was waiting in the trees. She even laughed once, just once, when an old woman at the market called her the strongest girl this side of the county. But even then she flinched when a wagon wheel cracked loud behind her. Some bruises don't heal, they just fade enough to cover. One evening I found her sitting by the church steps, sunset bleeding through the clouds behind her. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a piece of paper. I opened it. It was a drawing, rough but careful. A cabin, my cabin, with smoke rising from the chimney, and 2 horses tied outside. I've been thinking, she said, eyes still on the horizon, about leaving, about going somewhere new. But I don't want to go alone. I looked at her, didn't speak for a while, then folded the paper and tucked it into my coat. Hush. Past the old riverbed, past the tree line, Lorne Hollow disappeared behind us like a bad dream trying to hold on, and somewhere along the ridge, she whispered again. But this time, it wasn't pain. Thank you for not looking away. I didn't say anything, just nodded, and kept riding, because sometimes silence is the only thing loud enough to carry the truth. The trail out of Lorne Hollow ran narrow between 2 ridgelines. One side dropped to dust and scrubbed, the other held onto pine trees, like they were the last thing keeping it from falling apart. We didn't talk much that first day, just rode, let the wind and the birds do the speaking. I could tell she was still carrying something heavy, not just what they did to her, but what the town refused to do. That kind of betrayal don't shake off easy at camp. She didn't sit by the fire, stood just outside the light, like she was scared warmth might come with a cost. You ain't gotta be afraid out here, I told her. She shook her head. It's not the woods I'm afraid of. I didn't ask what she meant, didn't have to. By the 3rd day, we made it to my cabin. A crooked little place tucked into the curve of the hills, where the river still ran slow and the deer drank without flinching. She looked at it the way some folks look at grave markers, half with peace, half with memory. You built this? She asked. With my own hands. She touched the doorframe gently. It's quiet. That's the idea. That night, as the moon came up, I caught her staring at the sky like it owed her something. She didn't blink much, didn't seem tired. Finally, she said it. They did it before Slim, before him. I didn't move. When I first got there, day 2, I was promised a job, meals room, but Sheriff Taub came knocking after sundown, said I owed the town for taking me in. She swallowed hard. Said I could pay in silence or pay in screams. The fire cracked. I left at first light. Didn't tell Elsie where I was headed. She stood on the porch, arms wrapped tight around her middle. The wind was sharp that morning, colder than it should have been for spring. The trees whispered things I didn't want to hear. My mind was already set. I wasn't going back to Lorne Hollow to make threats. I was going back to put an end to something. The town was quieter than usual when I arrived. A few ranch hands shuffled past me without a nod. The blacksmith looked up once, then looked right back down. Even the saloon doors hung a little more still, like waiting to be kicked open. Sheriff Harlan Taub wasn't in his office. His deputy, young, mean-eyed, and twitchy, was leaning against the jail porch chewing tobacco. You come back for a reason? He asked, not bothering to hide the sneer in his voice. I'm here for the sheriff, I said. He didn't blink, just spit on the ground. You'll wait your turn. No, I said. I found Taub in the back of the saloon. Same table as always, smoke curling up from his cigar. One hand nursing a glass. He didn't look surprised to see me. Figured you'd be back, he said. Figured you'd be gone, I replied. He chuckled, a dry, tired sound. This town don't run without me. No, I said. It rots because of you. He set the cigar down. You come to make accusations or just stir up ghosts? I came because a girl whispered something no one else would hear. His jaw twitched. You think I'm scared of some little runaway's lies? No, I said, stepping forward. I think you're scared of the truth. His hand went to his gun. Mine already had mine drawn. I didn't fire, but the sound of my hammer cocking was louder than any bullet. The saloon froze. Men turned. Cards were dropped. Every last soul inside understood what was coming. You pull that iron, I said low, and there's no talking after. He didn't blink, didn't move, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew. There were no more shadows left to hide in. Not now. Not after what Elsie had told me. I backed out slow, gun still raised, walked out into the street where the morning sun painted long lines across the dust. Tob followed, hands still twitching near his sidearm, and just like that, the street emptied. Doors shut, windows closed. The town held its breath. Because they'd seen duels before, but never like this. Never for someone nobody had the guts to stand up for. We faced each other in the open, two men with too much behind them. No good future ahead. I'm gonna give you one chance, I said. Walk away. Leave this town, leave her alone, don't look back. He squinted at me. I made this town, he growled. No, I said. You poisoned it. He drew. So did I. The shot echoed like thunder. Tob dropped to one knee, clutching his side. Not dead, but bleeding. Bad. I stood over him, gun still drawn. This is what justice looks like when the law won't give it, I said. And for once, Lorne Hollow didn't look away. Sheriff Harlan Tob didn't die that day, but something in him did. I left him where he fell, bleeding in the dirt, pride leaking out faster than the blood. No one came to help him. Not his deputy, not the shopkeeper, not the barkeep who used to pour his whiskey before the glass even hit the counter. They all watched. And for the first time since ID set foot in that cursed town, I saw something different in their eyes' shame. Not because I shot him, but because none of them ever had the spine to try. I rode out slow, the sun at my back, and justice still ringing in my ears. Didn't look behind me. Didn't need to. ID left the rot in the open. Let it bleed in front of God and everybody. Back at the cabin, Elsie was in the garden digging in the soil. With her bare hands, her dress was covered in dust. Her hair pulled back. She looked up when I arrived, but didn't smile, not yet. What happened? She asked. Is alive, I said, but he won't be sheriff no more. She wiped her hands on her skirt, eyes narrowing, and the town. They saw it. She turned back to the dirt. That don't mean they'll change, no, I said. But now they know someone's watching. That night, we didn't talk much, just sat by the fire listening to the crickets and the low hush of the trees shifting in the wind. Elsie reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me without a word. It was another drawing this time. It was a woman, older, stronger, standing tall, with a rifle in one hand, and a child at her side. In the background, our cabin smoke rising gently from the chimney. That's you? I asked. Maybe someday, she said, if I can ever stop hearing him in my sleep. There was a long silence after that, the kind that stretches deep into the night and doesn't ask to be filled. You will, I said finally. How do you know? Because you're still drawing. The next morning we found hoofprints near the creek, fresh ones. 2 horses, one heavy, one lighter. I knelt beside them, fingers brushing the indentations in the mud. Someone had been watching us. Elsie stepped back, suddenly pale. You think he sent someone? He's not sheriff anymore, I said, but fear doesn't give up that easy. She looked toward the woods like they might close in any second. What do? I stood slowly. We prepare. Because sometimes monsters bleed, but sometimes they come back. The tracks didn't lie. Whoever had been riding near our cabin had circled twice. Once wide, once close. No sign of firewood gathering or hunting. No supplies dropped, just a slow, deliberate loop, like they were memorizing the layout. Watching, studying, waiting, I spent the rest of that day reinforcing the shutters, checking the rifle, sharpening the blade. I kept beneath the floorboards. The cabin was small, tight, easy to defend, hard to run from. Elsie didn't ask questions. She just helped. She laid a line of broken twigs through the brush behind the outhouse. A signal trap ID shown her 2 days prior. She salted the windows, something her grandmother used to do back east. Said it didn't stop men, but made her feel like she still had a say. That night, we didn't light a fire, kept to the shadows, eyes trained on the tree line. The moon hung low and red, casting long slashes across the clearing, and sometime past midnight, we herded a horse, one slow, then silence. I raised my rifle. Elsie held her breath. No knock, no voice, but a figure moved beyond the tree line, barely a silhouette. Just standing there, watching step into the light. I called out. Nothing. The shape didn't flinch, just stood. Elsie gripped my arm, her whisper barely a breath. That's him. I don't know how, but that's him. I knew what she meant. Some shadows carry the shape of a man, others carry the memory of one. Sheriff Tubb. I called again, still nothing. Then the shape turned and disappeared into the woods. I waited another hour before I moved, followed the trail at a distance, rifle raised, boots silent over pine needles. But the woods were empty. No hoofprints, no broken twigs, no sound. It was like he'd never been there. When I got back to the cabin, Elsie was sitting by the door, holding a page from her sketchbook. She handed it to me without a word. The man in the drawing wore a badge, but his eyes were hollow, empty sockets, and his mouth was wide open, like he was screaming, but no sound would come out. I looked at her. You dreaming again? She nodded. Same one. No, she said. This time he wasn't chasing me. I frowned. Then what was he doing? She stared at the fireless hearth. He was standing over you. The air changed after that night. Colder, still, like the trees themselves were holding their breath again, just like they did back in Lorne Hollow. Whatever we'd left behind wasn't done with us yet. Elsie barely slept. Her eyes turned glassy, voice quieter than usual. She kept her sketchbook close. Now the pages were filled with darker shapes, twisted cabins, faceless men, a girl in a dress surrounded by flames. She didn't show them to me anymore, just drew in silence, and I let her. Because some wounds dawn close when stitched. They have to be spoken out of you, or drawn out one scratch at a time. Then came the letter, slipped beneath our cabin door sometime during the early dark. No hoofprints, no sound of approach, just a folded page resting against the threshold. No envelope, no name, no lie. Just 6 words scratched in jagged ink. You should vive let her burn. Elsie didn't speak when she saw it, did not cry, did flinch. She just picked up the note and lit a match. The flame crawled up the edge fast, turning those words to ash. She didn't even blink, but I saw it. Her hands were shaking. We rode to town that day. Didn't say why, I didn't need to. Lorne Hollow wasn't at ours anymore. Maybe it never had been, but something tied to it still clung to us like rot to roots. The saloon was shuttered, the jail locked. Folks kept their heads down again like the clock had turned back. Only one man met our eyes, Deputy Greavy, leaning against the general store porch, chewing a matchstick. Well, he said as we approached, look what the wind dragged back. I stepped off my horse, slow, calm. Elsie stayed seated. You know about the letter? I asked. He grinned. People say a lot of things. People like Harlan Tubb. He didn't flinch. He ain't sheriff no more, he said. Ain't in anything no more. That caught me. What do you mean? Answer my. Go but you. He's dead, Greavy said, spitting the matchstick onto the steps. Found in the river 2 days after your little showdown. Got shot, bled out, crawling through the reeds. Elsie's head jerked. You said he survived. Greavy shrugged. He did, until he didn't. It didn't feel right. Tubb was a lot of things. Cruel, cold, rotted through, but he wasn't careless. He wouldn't run. He'd dig in, unless someone dug for him first. Who found him? I asked. No one worth naming, Greavy said. Best you two keep riding. Some of us are trying to forget. Elsie looked down. Her hand drifted to her coat pocket, where I knew she kept her sketchbook. Then she said something I hadn't heard in days. We were not the ones who should forget. Greavy just smiled wide and thin. Well, he said, then I guess you ought to be careful who remembers you. We left Lorne Hollow again that afternoon, but the trees followed us longer this time. and by dusk I swear I could feel something riding just behind us in the wind. Something that wasn't done yet. We rode fast that evening, faster than before. The wind pressed against our backs like it wanted us gone. By the time we made it back to the cabin, dusk had curdled into something mean. Sky bruised purple, air thick with something you couldn't see but could feel in your teeth. I checked the traps. All had been tripped. Nothing caught. Just the feeling someone had walked through them on purpose. Elsie didn't go inside. She stood out in the clearing, her eyes locked on the tree line, her hands clutching her coat like she was holding herself together. "What if it wasn't him?" she whispered. I stepped beside her, Tob. She shook her head. "The one watching? The one who left the note?" My chest tightened. "What are you thinking?" She didn't answer at first. Then finally, soft as a prayer, "What if it's one of the others?" That stopped me cold, because in all the talk of Tob, of Slim, of the town, silence had forgotten something. She hadn't whispered what happened, not all of it. That night she told me about the third man. No badge, no saloon tie. Just a man who came to the boarding house the second week she'd been there. Said he was from out of town. Said he'd paid for the room and so had paid for her too. She never saw his face. Only his boots polished black. The kind of shine that doesn't belong in places like Lorne Hollow. I thought maybe he was someone important, she said, eyes flickering toward the fire. Someone even Tob answered to. I sat back, and the sickness in my gut turned sharp. "You think Hez the one watching now?" I think she said he never stopped. That night I slept with the rifle across my chest. Elsie kept a lantern burning near her bed, the light flickering across the sketches on her wall. The latest one showed 3 men, one lying dead in the street, one standing in fire, and the last a faceless shape standing just beyond the trees. Just before dawn, I woke to the sound of metal striking wood, quick, clean repeating. I rolled out of bed, barefoot, rifle in hand. Elsie was already standing at the door. Someone had nailed something to the front of our cabin. I yanked it free. A plank of wood burnt at the edges, and carved into the center with something jagged and deliberate were 7 words. She whispered once, "Next time she screams." Elsie didn't speak, just sat on the step, arms wrapped around herself, rocking back and forth. I didn't try to comfort her. I just loaded my gun, because whoever was out there, they weren't trying to scare us. They were trying to remind her of what silence used to cost, and this time they weren't going to get the chance. I stared at that note a long time. The wind slipped through the doorway like even it knew what was coming. Elsie was gone, but she hadn't gone quiet. She'd left her sketchbook open page, still fresh charcoal, smudged lines rushed. It was a drawing of me standing alone in a place I'd never seen before. A narrow canyon, sharp cliffs on both sides, sun just a sliver behind the hills. Widow's Cut. I'd heard the name before. Back in Lorne Hollow, folks spoke of it like it was cursed. A place where outlaws went to vanish and honest men went to die. No law, no trail, just dry bones and old echoes. And now she was there, waiting, or worse, bait. I packed light rifle, 6 cartridges, 1 knife, and a flask filled with something stronger than water. I rode through dusk like it might fall apart behind me. Didn't bother writing a goodbye. Either I came back with her, or I didn't come back at all. Widow's Cut was colder than it should have been. Shadows clung to the canyon like wet cloth. The wind screamed once, then vanished. No birds, no rustle of brush. Just the sound of my horse breathing heavy and the creak of my saddle as I dismounted. I walked the last stretch on foot, rifle ready. Every step was deliberate, measured. Dead men were watching. I could feel it then. I saw her tied to a post at the center of the dry basin. Arms pulled back, knees in the dust. Her face was bloody, but she was upright and she saw me. Not with fear, not with panic, but with fire. Her lips moved barely more than breath. Don't give them what they want. Behind her in the ridge's shadow, a man stepped forward, not the sheriff, not Slim, not anyone I'd met before. But I recognized him by the black boots, polished clean, unscuffed, by the dust of any town. "You made a mess," he said, cleaning one up. I answered. He smirked. "She should have stayed, broken, would have lived longer." I raised my rifle. "You didn't flinch. You'll kill me and another takes my place," he said. "But she..." Shall never forget. That's when I knew what he was, not just a man, a symbol, a rot that moved from town to town wearing different names, different hats, and he thought fear would keep her silent forever. But fear had a reckoning, and it had just arrived. A scar of a place carved deep in the hills like the land had once screamed and never healed. They say nothing grows there, they're right, no trees, no birdsong, just dirt. And the bones of secrets buried shallow. I arrived before sundown, just like the note said, rifle across my back knife, strapped to my boot heart, steady and rage cold. She was there. Elsie, hands tied to a split post, knees in the dust. A bruise blooming on her cheek like a brand. The man standing beside her wasn't wearing a badge, wasn't wearing black boots either. He was clean, pressed coat, trimmed beard, soft hands, but his voice, I knew it before he spoke. You should have stayed, gone drifter. I stepped forward. You're the one from the boarding house, I said. He smiled. Smart girl, that one. I warned them she was trouble. Said, shed, whisper, then scream, then burn every good man down with her. He stepped closer to her. Too close, but they didn't listen. Thought Shed stay quiet if they just broke her right. My fists tightened. You think hurting her makes you a man? I asked. I think letting her speak makes me dead, he said calmly. That's when I realized. He wasn't alone. From the ridge behind, two more figures stepped out, both armed, both aiming. I raised my hand slowly. You want me? I said. Let her go. He shook his head. Shez the message. The first shot came from the trees, not mine. The second dropped one of his men clean off his feet. Then I saw it. Elsie still tied, but grinning through the blood on her lip. Shed drawn help. From the ridge behind me, a shadow moved. Clara Frome, the old trapper woman Wed helped weeks ago, rifle in hand. Behind her, Deacon Shaw, who once called Elsie cursed, now calling out range marks like a war scout. Turns out not everyone in Lorne Hollow had forgotten how to be human. The third man turned to run. I dropped him with a shot through the knee, the one in the coat. He didn't move. Just looked at me and said, she's not worth this. That's when I walked up real slow and let him look into my eyes. No, I said she was worth everything. And I hit him once hard, watched him drop like the coward he was. Elsie collapsed in my arms when the rope was cut, didn't speak, didn't cry, just breathed, and that was enough. We rode back to the cabin together that night. Side by side, the others followed behind. No torches, no songs, just quiet resolve. Justice don't always come in law books. Sometimes it comes in the form of people too tired to stay quiet. Weeks passed. The sketches changed. Elsie's drawings grew lighter. Less blood, more trees, less fire, more sky. One morning I found one tacked to the wall. It showed her standing by the river, smiling, and beside her, me. No rifle, no shadow, just peace and the whisper that started it all. It hurts when I said it faded into something else. It's getting better, and this time, the town didn't look away.